get to Ohio State, Penn State. And these two teams have allowed a combined 13 touchdowns. They are giving up together a total of 2 touchdowns a game. Actually, technically, it's 1 touchdown a game. So this could be first one to 17. I find the quarterback discussion to be utterly fascinating because, again, the nuanced conversation around Penn State, and you've mentioned this on the show before, like you're concerned about their explosive plays. For the record, they have 1 all season of over 40 yards. That is last out of 133 teams. So it is a smart and nuanced topic to mention about Penn State. Ohio State's basically number 1 in the Big Ten across the board in explosive plays on offense. Penn State's basically at the bottom of everyone. Like, I think they have 8. No, they have 16 total plays of 20 plus yards or more. You know who's number 1 in the country? LSU? 59. So on average, Ohio State's getting multiple huge 40-yard chunk plays per game, and Penn State is getting like 0.2. They've gone all their games with 1 of them total. So it is an important talking point because the quarterback play, Kyle McCord has been far more efficient. His yards per play at like 9.7. Drew Allar's down in like the 80s nationally, but is not turning the ball over because of that efficiency and patience. And so my question to you, Steve, what beats Ohio State on the road with that Ohio State defense? Is it a rock fight, patient approach the way Penn State has won games all season with a defense that's given up like less than 3 yards per play the last few games? Or do they need to stretch the field, to stretch out the defense and play differently than they have the last 6 games? What is the way Penn State should attack Ohio State?
That is the $1 million question for Saturday. I think, first of all, I would say one storyline that I've been trying to wrestle with in my mind is Penn State hasn't necessarily needed a big play offense to get by some of its opponents. So it is past the midpoint of the season, so I would assume they're not really holding anything back. But maybe they open it up a little bit more in this game. And like you mentioned, Drew Allar's been great, hasn't thrown an interception, but the big plays aren't there. The interesting thing is when you look at Penn State's numbers, they're 19th in the country in success rate, and they're 2nd in the Big Ten in third down conversions. They're doing a good job of staying on schedule, and they're converting third downs when they have them. So I think they're taking the small chunks. They're staying on schedule. Singleton and Allen at running back leading the Big Ten's number 1 rushing offense. So I think there's going to have to be a kind of combo of what you're getting at there. From an offensive line standpoint, this is a tough ask of Penn State. You know, it's the biggest test so far of the season for this group. Are they going to be able to keep Allar out of those 3rd and longs? I do think they are going to have to hit a couple big plays here because I do think the matchup, like you said, it is a very classic kind of line of scrimmage Big Ten game. You've got 2 defenses that are probably going to control this game. Which one of these offenses can do just enough? It's a big play, maybe a couple of them that might decide it. And that's why I think if you're Ohio State, you probably feel better because of your offensive weapons. But I think to answer your question, I think Penn State will need to hit at least 1, 2 of these big plays to win. I don't know if you can beat Ohio State just by small chunks here.
I don't. Your phrase is the exact right one for this game. Stay on schedule, and it's a lot easier to convert on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 2nd and 3 when you're ahead of schedule and ahead of the chains, as they say. Ohio State's not going to give you that. So the way you combat that from a game plan standpoint, in my opinion, throw the ball on 1st down with play action. That's it. Throw the ball on 1st down with play action. That allows you then to go back to the run when you start stacking play calls. So if Allar's been, to your point, he's not getting a lot of yards, but he's taking care of the football. And they were very patient against Iowa. So they need to blend that patience with a little bit of a tweak of a game plan. And to me, that is play action, passing on 1st down. You don't have to take like deep shots. It doesn't have to be 50-yard shots. Play action, pass. Give me those 8-yard digs. Give me the quick outs. Give me the bubble screens. Get the ball out of his hands quickly on 1st down with play action. That's my advice. Nobody's asking for it, but that's my advice.
Yeah, Mike Yursich is on the phone right now wanting your
Nobody
advice
cares.
for Saturday's game. I do
Nobody
think
cares.
the running backs in space, because Singleton and Allen are I think your two best playmakers. I think there are questions about Penn State's receivers. Harrison Wallace has been banged up this year. Keandre Lambert-Smith is having a great start to the season. They can get the tight ends involved as well. But if there's a game where Penn State's lack of explosiveness in the passing game and maybe the receivers for Penn State, if they're not up to par, it could get exposed here, because Ohio State, while they're not getting sacks this year, they're not giving up big plays. They're getting off the field. Their line of scrimmage is good too. So if it's in those if Penn State is 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and their receivers aren't winning, we saw last year JTT had that huge game in Happy Valley that was really kind of the difference in that game. So I think for Penn State, they're going to need those explosive plays, but I'm looking to see how do they use those running backs. And if they can't get the running game going, they're going to have to try and get a chunk play here or there. But the same thing is true on the other side too.
Yep.
Because Ohio State's offensive line to me is just a massive concern. And I think Penn State's defensive front could control the line of scrimmage here. You look at from the rushing offense on Ohio State, 3.5 yards per carry in 3 Big Ten games this year. Of course, Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams are banged up. So it's almost, there are massive questions here for both offenses going into Saturday.
Well, and Penn State, they gave up 44 points and 7.5 yards per play in that loss at home last year, but they held them under 100 yards rushing. And we all know the concerns that Ohio State fans have sometimes about Ryan Day and calling plays. Now, he's been great, and Kyle McCord has slowly gotten better. And again, 9.7 yards per attempt is like top 10 in the nation for Kyle McCord. And, Allar's down at 6.9. So it's like every time they throw the ball, Ohio State's getting 3 more yards than Penn State. So that matters. Going back to the explosive plays, I know I'm saying this because it's just the only data we have on these two teams. And to your point, both offensive lines, we would agree, are sort of the underdog in the matchup with the defensive front. Ohio State leads the Big Ten with 11 plays of 40 yards or more. That is 2 per game on average. Penn State has 1 play all season of 40 yards or more. Whichever team has that play this game wins the game, because it could come down to 1 play. And Penn State has not shown it to us. Ohio State does it twice a game on average. So if they have 2 giant chunk plays that even just result in field goals, that could be the 14-10 win. That could be the 17-14 win. Those explosive plays are going to matter. And then, of course, all the other cliche stuff, right? Protect the quarterback, turnovers, I think what's going to happen is Penn State is going to be put in a very interesting analytical situation in the fourth quarter with their offense. And James Franklin is going to have to make a 50-50, very complicated call. And no matter what he does, what the outcome is, somebody is going to second guess it. And it might be the right call, and it might have the right outcome, and it might lead to a victory. But it is going to be one of those 50-50 analytics versus eye test, 4th down type of offensive decisions. And in the moment, we're all going to, like, if Twitter was cool again, we'd all go onto Twitter and be like, oh, James Franklin. It's just going to be fascinating to watch. I think there's a big decision coming in the fourth quarter for Penn State.
I'm envisioning James Franklin watching tape on Dan Lanning's decisions last week for Oregon, taking notes. I think something else to consider here for Ohio State, Devin Brown played some, quarterback last night. I know he's the backup quarterback, so obviously he's playing quarterback, but he got in on some running plays. So I'm curious to see, do they use him at all as another weapon? If the run game is struggling for Ohio State, does Ohio State have a full arsenal of weapons? Getting Travion Henderson back is kind of important because he had that big play against Notre Dame. But I think ultimately here, we could talk about the skill players. Marvin Harrison Jr. for Ohio State. I think Penn State's running backs, I think if Singleton and Allen, like they might be, it's even between the two. They're both great running backs, but Ohio State has a clear edge at receiver. And I think you trust Kyle McCord more in the spot. Like he's done it on the road against Notre Dame. I am curious at some point this year, does Ohio State sort of, I don't want to say just take the training wheels off, but at some point it feels like you can ask a little bit more of him. Now this game,
let it fly. Let it fly.
In this game though, against Penn State's front, their secondary is outstanding. King and Dixon are 2 outstanding corners. It is going to be a just fascinating battle between a great Penn State defense and Ohio State offense that is trying to find itself. it also feels like this is one of those games where does Ohio State just hold serve? They've won 9 out of 10 against Penn State. Penn State always plays them tough. Yep. Or does Penn State go on the road and win? And we're talking about that sort of not changing of the guard, but we're talking about Penn State being the biggest contender to Michigan this season in the Big Ten instead of Ohio State.
Well, I mean, I think one of the
some
two
people,
of us have been doing that all season. There's no reason to pick Penn State in this game. There really isn't.
Is it prediction time for this game?
The predictions don't matter, but there's no real reason to pick Penn State. So I'm going to pick Penn State.
I like Ohio State.
I do too. They have a quarterback who's evolving quicker. They're going down the field. They've got way more weapons. They've shown the ability to make the X plays. They're at home. They traditionally win this game. I think to your point, the one thing is Ohio State, Penn State has a couple of things that very few teams have when they match up with Ohio State, and that is a secondary that can go man-to-man with some of those guys, a defensive line that can win at the line of scrimmage, and a quarterback who takes care of the football. That is the recipe to beat Ohio State. And I think the fact that they've lost so many times, maybe there's an emotional edge here for Penn State. The way Michigan came into, Ohio Stadium last year and won that game. So there's no real reason to pick Penn State in this one. But I'm going to.
I trust Penn State's offensive line more than I do Ohio State's for sure.
Yeah. All right.
But
I'll take Penn State. You can take Ohio State. It's okay.
I am taking Ohio State because I think I want to see it out of Penn State's offense first. I think they certainly have the potential, but I think Ohio State at home. I think Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison. There's a play in the fourth quarter that one offense has to make, and I'll take Ohio State because I trust the weapons more at this point. But I think
literally agree with everything you just said.
I think it is I don't know, I want to say a classic like 13-10, like break out the fullback in the neck rolls Big Ten game.
I hope so.
It's going to be, I think, a very much a defensive battle here in Columbus.
Larry Johnson.